Welcome to the human narratives. Welcome to the human narratives, everyone. I hope that you've been having a beautiful and lovely and gorgeous week. And I hope that you're looking forward to another beautiful and gorgeous week. The sun is out. I went for a beautiful walk today and it was just so lovely. It was hot, but the sun just penetrating through your skin with the light wind that blows through. I mean, it was just so wonderful. So I hope that your Sunday evening or afternoon was beautiful, and you're still enjoying that day. And if things are not going so well, hopefully by the time you're through listening to this beautiful sound, and also being able to share this information today, it will kind of boost some energy maybe that we've been lacking, to go into the week and kind of switch things up and make it feel a little bit different, right? So, welcome to the Human Narratives. This is your host, Dorinda. It's a pleasure to be back. So, today I wanted to talk about a topic that is often, it's talked about a lot in our different systems, in our homes, in our schools, in our communities, in our churches, in our mosques, in, our different religious worship temples. So because we are all from different places all over the world, right? We're all immigrants. So today I wanted to talk about immigration. I wanted to talk about immigration. Just a little bit about immigration, because I know that with the election, that is an area that is often impacted with so many other different areas, of course, that are impacted. Of course, our young babies, our children, early education, those areas are impacted with funds being, sometimes cut, those programs that help our kiddos, who are learning and starting into the educational systems. There are programs like for, parent young adults and women who vulnerable population, like women who tends to need, type of medical care, and they're not able to receive those services like Planned Parenthood, and those resources are sometimes cut off because, of the type of services that are provided. So there's so many different things that elections, politics, impact, right? All of us. So that's why it's always important. I know a lot of times during election times, I hear people say, "Well, I'm not voting," and then I hear other people say, "Well, I'm voting. I'm voting because at least my voice or my vote is going to be counted." And then I hear people say, "Well, I'm not voting because, well, my voice is not going to be counted anyway because it's the electoral college who select, the individuals, the leaders." And we are all, respectfully so, can stand on our perspective. But at the end of the day, we all have something to do, and we all have to take actions to bring about change, right? And whether it's in those different areas that I just mentioned, or even if it's in immigration, it can be in our education systems. We're losing a lot of good teachers, a lot of good teachers because of lack of funding. We're losing a lot of good teachers, but not only teachers, but also medical staffs, people in the healthcare system. So there are so many things, politics can impact. But today I wanted to talk about immigration because I am also an immigrant. Okay. I am also an immigrant. So let's talk about immigration. So there are different type of immigration, but I wanted to specifically focus on immigration laws and immigration topics solely around the United States of America, right? So there are different types. There's the natural born and the naturalized individuals who have the rights to become a citizen in the U.S. I was a naturalized citizen. I came from another country due to a civil war. And I will explain that process later on. And I was able to, after a couple of years of living in the United States and proving that I am a, well abiding, law abiding citizen, paying my taxes, working, not getting in trouble, not breaking the laws, and not hurting people. Laws are created for a reason, not because that someone just got up one day and said, you know what, I don't have anything to do. Let's go create some laws. I mean, there's some people who might do that, who have powers, and we all can see how that tend to turn out. Just saying. But laws are created for a reason, right? So that's one of the process. So being able to come through those process. So being born here, so you cannot be deported if you're born here. But if you're a naturalized citizen, you can be deported if you committed a certain type of crime, like heinous crime, murder, rape, those type of criminal activities. After you've already served your time, you still can be deported to wherever you came from. You are, of course, eligible to vote and hold a passport and have rights, pay your taxes, the beautiful roads that you drive on, the beautiful system that we all breathe in. We have to be able to share responsibility to take care of it, right? So there's also this permanent residence. So there's a process, of course, when you first travel into the United States. In order for you to become a naturalized citizen, you have to, of course, either have a temporary resident card, and then later on, that can be upgraded into a permanent resident card, which is your green card. And from that process on, that will be upgraded onto becoming your citizen, right? Of course. But there's also, of course, people who may start all the way from the bottom level, even before the temporary resident process, where they could do refugee process, right? Asylum, all of those things are undocumented, unauthorized documentation. All of those things can happen. So let's talk about the top tier, and then we'll kind of go down to the bottom, okay? All right. So we've already talked about the citizenship. We already talked about the permanent residence a little bit. Permanent residence is next. This is where a person holds a green card and they become a green card holder. And you have to hold this card, I believe, for about 5 years. And you have to be able to work. Like I said, you have to be able to have a lawful status in the United States. And you can have this status indefinitely if you choose it not to become a citizen. So if you choose it just to be a green card permanent resident, you can do that for the rest of your life. You don't have to become a citizen if you don't want to, but you can become eligible for citizenship after 5 years, and you have to apply for the process, study for the exam, and also go and also ensure that you take the exam. You may lose or your status if, of course, if you commit certain type of criminal activities, those heinous criminals activities, right? So that would keep you out of the country for forever, permanently, or for a certain period of time. So once you're a citizen, if you're not a citizen or if you're not a permanent resident, then you could either hold a temporary resident status, right? So people who hold this type of status are in the country for a limited amount of time. And the different types of temporary residency are the student visas. Of course, this allows foreign nationals to study at an approval institution, and this may be for a limited amount of time. You may even have the right to even work as well. There's also a work visa. This is a work visa. This is tied to an employer or a specific type of job. A lot of doctors who specializes in certain type of areas. Maybe there may be a different type of need in those areas where they may need that expertise in the United States. So they may bring that professional into the country, right? So it may be nurses, those type of essential working positions. Let skilled workers and all of those things. So a tourist visa, someone who just wants to come stay for traveling or for just visiting, for a wedding or for a graduation, or sometimes for sad moments, right? For a funeral, those type of things. There's also the temporary protective status, and this is granted for people who are, of course, facing unsafe conditions in their home country, such as war or disasters. And this paths can depend either depending on what's going on in the person's country, if this is going to be a permanent status or not. It all depends based on renewal. And of course, it's the refugee and or asylum. This is granted to people who are also fleeing prosecution or danger in their home country. And they may, like I said, like earlier when I mentioned about the temporary protected status or the TPS, they may also either obtain a permanent status or temporary status depending on the period of renewal or what's going on in those situations that in which they're staying in the United States for. All right. So I know a lot of times when we talk about immigration, the first thoughts we often think about is or undocumented immigrants, right? Or unauthorized immigrants. A lot of the laws that are being created, or a lot of the laws that are we hear about are often geared toward this population, individuals who are here who do not have who enter the country without permission, or individual who did enter the country with permission but overstayed with their visa and all of those things, and they may face deportation. But sometimes there are instances and situations where people can stay if they apply for legal status based on different type of programs through the immigration system, right? So there may be like a humanitarian or special statuses that one may apply for that may that one can be eligible for, like the deferred action for childhood arrivals, or for the U visas for victims of crimes, or the sponsorship based on the pathway programs, family reunification or fiance visas, those type of things. People who are getting married overseas and bringing their spouses to the United States, investors visas. So those are different type of status or special circumstances in which one may also be able to come into the country. Now we'll talk a little bit about that as well. All right, I know that's a mouthful. It's a lot. It's a lot. The process is also very long as well, especially when you're applying for your family. I've had to go through some of these processes, not only personally but also professionally, and being able to support people out there. But it is a long process. It is a tough process, and I understand that we want our country to be protected, of course, and we're doing everything to ensure that. It also important for us to also listen, right, to the individuals that are facing these different type of circumstances as to why they are here, and why they're needing the support, especially those individuals who are giving back into the community, those who are working, those who are paying their taxes, those who are building their communities, and they're pouring back. Those things are very important. So some of the immigration laws that I wanted to talk about is it's just few. The Immigration and Nationality Act, or which is also called the NIA. This is the foundation of the U.S. immigration law. The foundation. It covers everything: the visas, the green cards, deportation, asylum, naturalization. It's also administered by the USCIS, which is also the part of the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, DHS. So there are different types of programs, pathway programs. There's the family-based immigration, and this is for U.S. citizen and permanent and lawful permanent residents, which they can sponsor their relatives. And this could be like your spouse, your children, your parents, and your siblings. This is specifically if you, this is like your bio family, your direct bio family. Like I said, your spouse, children, parents, and siblings. And of course, you have the employment based immigration pathway program as well, which I spoke a little bit about earlier, where one may enter into the country and obtain visa for work purposes, for skill type of work. And you did, and there's different type of visa status that one can obtain, the EB1 or the EB5, and those different type of information are all on USCIS website, in which one can log on and also find more information about what those forms and information can provide for you if you're also in this process, or if you are in the field of helping people who are in this process. The diversity visa lottery, of course, this is a program that is held every year, in which people from different countries that are eligible to be able to apply can apply for this program, and those who win obtain visas to come to the United States. And of course, there are people that I've known who've done that, and also my late brother was one who came to the United States through that program as well. Refugee, I've talked about that. Asylum status, the special DACA program, and also the TPS program for individuals, like I said earlier, who are facing war and disasters in their country, or for undocumented immigrants who brought their children, for the DACA program, who brought their children here, and they're facing maybe deportation, but their children were born here, and they are being asked to go back into a country or into space in which they have no idea of what that space feels like. That's like me when someone comes and say, "Well, Dorinda, we're gonna take you back to Africa." I'm like, "Y'all gonna take me back? Well, yeah, do y'all have some shower where I'm gonna be taking my shower?" I know you guys may think this is all spoiled and whatever, but this is the life that I was raised in, right? So imagine someone just uprooted all of that from underneath me and said, "Oh, you're going back to a land that you are not familiar with." First of all, you weren't even born there, or even if you were born here, you weren't raised there. You don't know much about it. That the land that you do know about, that you do call home, it's not your home. It's a lot of shock. It's a lot of trauma. It's a lot that comes with that type of conversation in that space. So I hope, like I said earlier, that we're creating the space, not just to, like I said, protect our nation as we should, but also protect one another, because we are the nation, the people. So non-immigrant visa status, I've talked about that earlier. F1 is for students. There's also the B1 and B2 for business and tourism. And then the H1B, which is for skilled worker. L1 is for intra-company transfer. And then O1 for individual with like extraordinary abilities and things like that. So all of those things are forms, are on the USCIS website, government website. So as I mentioned earlier, in order for you to change your status, your green card status, to a citizenship status, you have to hold it for about 3 to 5 years. You have to have good moral character. You have to be able to speak, English, and pass the civic test. And I think there are circumstances, if you don't speak English, based on your age, they may provide support for you as well. Of course, you have to also continue to reside and be present in the United States. You can't just become a citizen and say, "Well, I'm going away," and just come in and out of the country as one may want. You still have to be able to be here, contribute, give back. That is the purpose of becoming a citizen in a space or in one's country. Deportation, of course. What are the reasons for deportation? There's so many different reasons. One of the most reasons a lot of times people are deported is for criminal activities, committing crimes. And once the individual completes their time, they are deported from the prison facility straight into their country. There's not going home. There's not, let me go sort out some few things. Maybe if you have some money and some privileges and some power, you may be able to pull that off. Sometimes few things they don't tell us out here that don't have that, eyes. But reality is, for most common people, you're going from the facility, from the penitentiary, straight into your country airport, and they're releasing you into their system, right? So for criminal activity or immigration fraud, any immigration fraud, okay, you may come into the country in a fraudulent way, or you may cause fraudulent behavior related to immigration laws or violation. You may overstay, so that may be immigration fraud, right? And a law violation, overstaying a visa. Sometimes, like I said, it may not be because someone just wants to stay just for pleasure or reason. It may be because they may not be able to go back for safety reasons, and you know they're not able to renew. So being able to make sure that you have some form of legal representation in those circumstances, so that you don't feel alone, and get someone that understand you and can hear you, not just someone you're paying your money to, but someone that understands and can hear you. I know a lot of times when you're a foreigner, you're placed in this type of situation, you're scared, you're afraid, it's already traumatic, and you're saying yes to everything because you assume that saying yes to everything is the right thing. No, you are a human being and you should be treated as that. So you have rights. And if you feel deep within your soul, within your spirit, within your gut, that something is off, right? So if you're being treated wrong, so speak up. You have a voice so that it can be heard in those circumstances. And if you feel like that lawyer is not doing so, get another lawyer, if you can. And I understand maybe in certain circumstances, we may not have that privilege, but if you do, utilize it. And if you don't, see if there are opportunities or doors in which you can obtain those those rights, or know how to use those rights that you have. So overstaying or even unauthorized entry, right? Some of the border patrol and other things that I will be talking about in shortly. Whew. Immigration, like I said, it's always a mouthful. It's so much to touch on. But as recently, when it comes to DACA and all of the Dreamers and Pathway programs, all of those things are currently being backlogged. A lot of the cases, even immigration cases, those who are filing for permanent residencies or citizenships or whatever the case is. One, we had COVID for years, right? So in which a lot of places and departments were closed, and we had to get back into living again. And once we were back into living, is going back and starting from the beginning. So there are also court cases that are pending in the Supreme Court, hearings that are currently pending and waiting for decisions. So there's so many different things, but there's also an increase in the border security and asylum rule changes, under different type of administration. So those are things that we need to just pay attention to, if this is, of course, an area that impacts you or someone that you may know, or even if you don't know, just something that we should be aware of, because it's important. So the DV program, which is the diversity programs, offers about 50,000 immigrant visas annually. That's a lot of people that comes into the United States just by plane. But it's such a huge, huge, huge program. I mean, it's hard for people to win, but people do win. Like I said, my brother who passed away was one of the one who were able to win to come to the United States years ago, as a result of this program, right? So let's see. All right. So you have to apply every year around October, and you, of course, you depending on what country you're applying for from, or as well. So the U.S. Border Control rules. Who manages the border control? The U.S. Customs and Border Protection, right? CBP, which is, of course, the main agency of land, air, and seaports and entry, right? U.S. borders, of course, the U.S. Custom and Border Protection, and Immigration and Custom Enforcement. Of course, they handle the enforcement inside the country, right? Who are ICE, and of course, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, who is USCIS. They handles the application for status adjustments, like green cards, residency, permanent residency, and all of those type of things, which is green card, right? The entry requirements at the border patrol, at the border, of course, if you're a U.S. citizen, you have to have your passport, and of course, you can re-enter. If you know, even if you have missing documents, of course, you may have to go through some few questions to be able to make sure that you are who you say you are, to be able to gain entry, right? And there's also the lawful permanent residence, which is the green card holder. You have to have your green card, if since you don't have a passport. And of course, most likely an ID and any other documentation that may be necessary based on questions that the border patrol officers may have, if they suspect or need the feel like they need to ask additional questions in any circumstances. And of course, for visa holders or foreigners, you have to have your visa, valid passport, evidence of your visits, your intent of why you're here, when you're planning on going back, and so forth. And all of this inspection process is for you to be able to gain entry, right? So they have to inspect your documents, they have to ask you questions about your traveling plans. So sometimes you may say, oh my goodness, these individuals are so nosy. And sometimes you may have dogs patrolling by as well to check to make sure the scene is clear, that you're not bringing or smuggling anything into the country, like any illegal substances, right? So they may search your belongings without a warrant, right? They may check for criminal records or prior immigration violation. That can also impact your entry into the country, because if you've been detained before, if you're a type of person who is violating the law, that's going to be a red flag. Ah. So reasons why one may be denied: if your visas, there are issues or it overstays or poor immigration violations, there are criminal backgrounds or lack of proof or financial support or purposes for even coming into the country. And all of this information are on the immigration website. One can obtain and learn more about it. I wanted to talk a little bit about immigration detention facilities, right? So, immigration facilities or detention center in the U.S., or sometimes they're often referred to as immigration prisons. Those are facilities where individuals, these are families, um, are held sometimes for years, sometimes for months, for deportation cases, for immigration status cases, while those cases are being processed, right? So these facilities are managed by Immigration and Custom Enforcement, which is ICE, which is the division of the Department of Homeland Security. So the few things, so the immigration center or detention center, it is kind of like this is like a civil detention center, not criminal. But even though sometimes we assume or feel like these individuals are being treated as criminal, right? Because they're entering the country illegally. And some may even have to face criminal charges based on maybe certain behavior or acts they may engage in while entering the country. But the condition often resembles, like, prison conditions, But of course, the families and individuals who live on these at these facilities try to make it as home as possible because they don't know a lot of time how long they're going to be there. So individuals may appear for hearings. They may, like I said, await their deportation. They may be at risk for threats and things like that as well. So a lot of times there are different people who, ICE may detain. So individuals who are, of course, trying to come back into the country, individuals who have, like I said, criminal violations, especially those violent criminal violations, those who are overstaying. So those are individuals a lot of times who are at risk, or may work from under the table to be able to try to provide for themselves and their families, because asylum seekers, who entered and maybe they are asked to go and they are not able to anymore or don't want to because of, like I said, safety or dangerous reasons, besides not just wanting to go back and follow the rules, right? So those type of different things, they may impact those decisions. So these are like private prisons companies. These are local jails, and these are ICE operated facilities. So there are about 200 centers, about 200 detention centers across the United States just for immigration detention. Okay. So common issues that are concerns that are normally reported. Of course, it's a prison facility. It's a facility in which one, like I said, of course, parents and family try to make it as homey as they can, but they don't have freedom, right, to be able to leave as they want or make decisions as they choose. So sometimes there are issues in this space because it also is a shared space. Different people, even though they're from different places around the world, they bring with they're living and in a circumstances that bring different values and different perspectives. So it's not always very comfortable. Sometimes there's concerns for overcrowding, there's concerns for lack of medical care, abuse by guards or staff, solitary confinement, lack of access to legal counsel, their voices not being heard, because they feel like, they're less than because they're behind a detention facility, even though that it should not be the case. Family separation, all of those things can be reported, if you believe that someone is encountering those concerns. They're normally like a someone at the facility who deal with grievances that should be able to address those type of issues. And if you understand that your family is not able to have a voice and you understand that you can for them, please ensure that you have a voice, because if you are not speaking up, then and other people are not speaking up, then change will never happen, and many other people's lives will continue to be impacted, because these are individuals, like I said, and these detainers or detainees, um, individuals, they have rights, right? So they have a right to a lawyer, but not government provided, of course. They have a right to hearing before immigration judge. They have a right to request bond. They have a right to appeal their decision. They have a right to speak to a lawyer or counsel. So because they're human, despite the fact that they have violated or um, a policy or law. However, they do not have the same protection as criminals defendants. No Miranda rights, no speedy trial guarantee. Okay? So this is like when no speedy trial guarantee. Okay? None. Children and family, of course, unoccupied minors are typically transferred to Office of Refugees, resettlements, shelters, family detention centers. Have drawn heavy children who population as a result of those unoccupied minors whose family maybe were already deported and they were left here, or who were separated from their family in whatever circumstances those individuals were separated. That's heavy, isn't it? That's heavy, especially seeing a baby behind a bar. Whew, my little heart. Jesus, have mercy. But I guess that's what, like I said, if someone is not talking about it, then change is never going to happen. And if someone is not doing about something about it, it's not just about talking, right? We also have to do something about it, because that's the only way advocacy can turn into action and can turn into the actual change that we're supposed to experience in this world. Yeah. So, um, So yeah, that's what I want to kind of share with you, beautiful people, today. I know that this was a little bit um, full. My stomach is full. I know that this was a little bit full, and a lot, but it's also things that we ought to know. These are things that it's important for us to be aware of, because, like I said, even if we're not impacted by it, our neighbors are, our children's peers at school. The next peer that your kiddo is sitting next to, some family that's been impacted, and that could be your child's best friend. And if that child, that best friend is not there anymore, it can impact that child's life. So there's so many different ways that we can play a role. There's so many different ways that we can impact, besides just saying, well, it's not happening to me, so I don't need to say or do anything. If it's happening to somebody, it is happening to all of us. So I hope that that sits well with you, and you have a beautiful and lovely evening. Always God's love and favor over you and your family. The Human Narrative. This is your host, and this is your girl. God bless you. Have a wonderful, wonderful, blessed day. Be the change that you want to see out there, because that's the only way change happen. We can talk about change if we're also not the change we want to see.